Adventure in Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, the Positively Pipeman segment with powerful business strategies from Michael Barbarita, the Next Step CFO guru. And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for having me. So today, I want to talk about adding more value. And, you know, if you go back to a couple of episodes that we had, we talked about, you know, what are the components of a compelling offer? Well, there was scarcity and urgency. There was risk reversal. There was bundling, which we're going to talk about next week. And there was being indifferent to the outcome and being more transformational versus transactional. But today, the fifth component is adding more value to your product or service. So I think, as I mentioned in a previous show, when I was in the frozen cookie dough business, I went in there with no experience, and there were 4,000 competitors, and I was looked at like just another cookie dough. It didn't really matter how great it was, the actual product, because there were 4,000 other choices. And so to try to differentiate myself from the competitors, I offered that one of the problems that they had is they wanted to offer cookies if they didn't, or even if they did, they really could never bake them nice and fresh because they didn't want to utilize their ovens for something like the secondary or tertiary product like cookie dough. They wanted to, if they were a pizza parlor, they wanted to use their ovens for pizza. Or if they're a sub shop, they wanted to use their ovens for subs. So what we did is we gave them a free convection oven, and that added value immediately to the cookie dough product and made a total difference in my ability to get into doors. And so by simply adding that value. And so today I just wanted to give some examples for roofing companies. I happen to pick roofing companies because they're kind of in the same boat. They're very, very competitive. And because of that, they're always negotiating lower prices. You know, it's I don't know what it is where they've conditioned the consumer to never accept the first volley, you know, the first estimate, because they've done a great job of conditioning and scaring the heck out of business owners in the roofing industry by virtue of always asking or getting a competitive bid that's a lower price and just being price shoppers, which, you know, just doesn't work in business today. And by the way, price shoppers are the most difficult customers to deal with anyway. But anyway,
totally.
Yeah. So here it is. So some of the things that a roofing company could say is that, you know, that would show that they add more value to the product, or show that their product has more value, is things like, you know, a lot of roofing companies take your insurance money and disappear. And so basically, especially in an insurance situation. So a roofing company could say that we don't take a single dollar until you see materials on your roof, and you keep half of the value of the job until the job is done right. So something like that adds more value. The other thing is we guarantee your final price before we touch your roof. No surprises, no add-ons, and no, we found another problem fee. So that's saying something like that starts to resonate with the customer because they're looking at it where, you know, that the estimate could change, you know, because, we found another problem. But this company is guaranteeing that if they find another problem, that's tough luck on the roofing company. And so just another example, people never, they promised a certain date and they don't deliver, they don't come to do the work on that date. And what the roofing company could say is, we complete your roof on the scheduled date or you don't pay full price, period. And so that's another thing that reinforces the value that you deliver. Customers are worried that the crew installing their roof got hired last week. And so what the business owner can say, as long as they have these type of workers, every installer in your job has at least 5+ years of certified experience. We verify their background before they even step on your property. And so that's another area that they add value. Now, this is a very competitive business, keep in mind, but these are things that you can say that will add value to the customer and get the customer away from price. Tired of roofers who never return calls? Well, your dedicated project manager returns every call within 2 hours, or your next service call is free. That's another added value. Worried about your landscaping, driveway, and windows surviving your roof job? We photograph your property before and after and fix any damage that we cause at no cost to you, guaranteed. How do you know they're not using? How do you know that roofing companies aren't using cheap shingles and pocketing the difference? Well, at our roofing company, we show you exactly what goes on your roof before installation, manufacturer direct, full transparency, no substitutions. So these are things that you can do. You can say, or you can message to the customer, or actually say it in your sales presentation that adds more value and gets the customer away from the transaction and into the transformation.
I think a lot of times people focus on price only because you haven't presented any value to them yet, and so that's the only thing they can go by.
That's exactly right, and so we keep reinforcing. You know, one of the clients, a couple of the clients we have are in the roofing industry, and it's a very competitive. But it's very hard to get the business owner not thinking about price. And dropping their price and how much, because sometimes it's endless. They're dropping their price, and they're looking at the gross profit. Here's something that they get that can trick them. They look at the gross profit dollars that they'll get on a job. If the job is $15,000, they might get $3,000 or $4,000 of gross profit after bending over on the price. They'll say to themselves, that's $3,000 to $4,000 that I could use. That's just not the way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's just not, because if you do those jobs in high quantity, you're not going to cover your overhead. And that's what's happening with a lot of these roofing companies. Their margins are thin to begin with, yet they're bending over just to get the jobs. And that can't happen. And that's just roofing. There are other industries. Look, the frozen cookie dough business, there were 4,000 competitors doing the exact same thing. There was only one way to differentiate. And it opened so many doors. And I even lost money on the opening order. But I understood, I believed in my product, and I understood in the long-term value of the customer.
That's the bottom line too with anything you're going to buy. Is it's not what it costs, it's what the value of it is,
right.
So.
But the mindset of the business owner, and this is why mindset is so important in business. The mindset of the business owner is they're putting themselves in the position of the customer, and they're using either their wallet or a lower end wallet, and they're saying, they probably can't afford it. Let me give them a break. That kind of thing. It just doesn't work. Long term, it's just a disastrous strategy.
When I train salespeople, one of the things I train them on is exactly that, because of the fact that, listen, I mean, sales is a transfer of emotion. I don't think any salesperson should get in the mindset, and they do all the time, what they would do if they were the customer. Because not everybody's the same, so if you go in with that attitude, you're, like you were just describing, you're going to have an issue. That's number one. Number two is the fact that, basically you have to find out what's valuable to those prospects and provide that value to them. And that value doesn't necessarily, and most of the time, doesn't just mean price. Like you said, incentives, something that gets them to act. Listen, I've bought stuff before just because of something stupid. Like, oh, you're giving me this, like if I'll give you a perfect example. There's one restaurant on their Dine Rewards. Every time you don't come for a while, they send you $10, okay, to use. So, of course, I'm constantly going back to the place because they keep giving me $10.
Right.
What I'm not thinking about is the fact that I'm spending more than I would other places, even though I'm getting that $10.
That's right.
I just think of, oh, I'm not going to, and I do think of it as, I'm not going to throw away a free $10. They're giving me a free $10. Why am I going to throw it away?
Exactly.
And then sometimes when I don't take advantage of it, I'm smart enough to realize, oh, well, I just spent $10 on my dinner at home, opposed to spending $50 to get $10 off.
Wow. Incredible. Yeah.
But
that's
it's
incredible.
psychology.
Right. And that when you add more value, it gets the customer away from thinking about price and more in the situations that I described. They might have heard, stories about people not showing, contractors showing up late. Most people understand that. They might have heard stories about when their insurance claims, they take 100% of their money up front, and then they just sit on it and do the job like 7 weeks later.
Yep.
All of those things, all of those horror stories get you away from the transaction and into understanding the real value that's being offered.
Totally. And how did they reach out to you to find out your real value?
Okay. Well, go to nextstepcfo.net. You can download a free copy of a book called Powerful Business Strategies. We also update our book by providing book interviews. So go to nextstepcfo.net/contact. Love to interview business owners for the next edition of my book. And the quid pro quo is that you'll learn strategies that your competition isn't doing. Go to nextstepcfo.net/contact, fill out the contact form, and in the message section, write the words book interview, and I'll send you a calendar link.
Nice. Well, thanks again for some amazing advice for our businesses out there, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.